Hi, good morning. My name is Mariah. If I have not been introduced to you yet before, I'm a certified Christian mental health coach, and I love being able to help you grow in emotional maturity as you learn how to follow God by implementing biblically based holistic practices. And so, my encouragement for you in these videos is to provide resources that you will be able to grow in your faith so that way, you'll be able to know what it looks like practically to be an emotionally healthy Christian. And so that is my hope for these videos. I'm very excited to be getting started with you. Before we begin, I want to introduce what these videos will look like so you have a set of expectations, and then we'll get into today's topic. So, the first thing that I will be doing is I will be introducing to you a subject line of what I believe the conversations we've been having throughout the week. We I love having conversations and I have them over on Instagram. So I am actually going to be putting a link in the description for that for you to be able to join me over there so we can have those conversations. And then I want to recap them here because the algorithm things can get lost in the shuffle, and I want to be able to create valuable resources for you. So that's what these conversations are going to be looking like. I'll be sharing the theme of what I believe the conversation we've been having throughout the week is. And then I will introduce to you a recommendation that I believe will be helpful for you in your emotional, physical, mental health. And sometimes those recommendations do have a commission that I will earn. And the reasoning for that is because I want to provide as much free resource for you as possible. And in order to do that, I do need to be able to pay my bills. So if you do purchase from me, that's awesome. If you don't, I do not expect that. I just want you to be able to have as much resources to you possible to grow in your faith and to be an emotionally healthy Christian. So I will share that with you. And then I will get into the subject of today's video. And then I will end the video by sharing with you a verse or a prayer that I believe will be helpful for you as you go towards the end of the week. So, with that being said, let's get started into today's subject. Now, the conversation that has been happening over on Instagram world and honestly in my head a lot. Oh, the other way that the conversation, I have to add this in because I forget. So I have conversations on Instagram, but I also have a weekly email that I send out as well. And most of that gets condensed on my email. It's where I send most of the initial conversation. And so if you haven't participated in that, if you're not a part of that community, I guess, I put the link in the description for you. I also will be sending you 3-day prayer guide. If you are not already a part of my email list, you get that for free to help you grow in your emotional faith. So, back to the conversation. The conversation that we have been having that has been this theme's week is God still good even if the new year is not how you expected it to be? That's the thought of the week. Now, before we get into more of that thought, I want to share with you today's recommendation. Today's recommendation is going to be Simply Earth. Simply Earth is an essential oil company that I love using personally. Essential oils have been around for thousands of years, and they are really helpful for your emotional, mental, and spiritual growth in a lot of ways. And the reasoning for that is because essential oils just are they're just so versatile in what you can do. So I love using Simply Earth because they are third party tested and they provide 13% of their profits towards human trafficking victims, which is a very important thing to me. And they're easy to use. So I get their monthly subscription that I can skip at any time with no penalty. And they come with 4 different essential oils, recipe cards, and tools to be able to use right away. So today I'm going to be using spearmint. I love spearmint because it's uplifting, it's refreshing, it helps provide clarity of mind. It is also really good if you're having like anxiety or tummy troubles because or like constipation. Okay, it's really helpful for that. It's just a great property. I love that God created spearmint. So I put a link in the description for you if you want to try that for yourself. It is something that I do earn a small commission of. So if you do decide to get it, thank you very much. If not, I just want it to be a tool for you to know that essential oils are a gift that God has given us and they've been around so long. Anyways, so thank you so much for that. We're going to go into today's subject. Is God still good, even if the new year isn't how you expected it to be? That's the question. The other day, I was walking with a friend, and we were going through TJ Maxx, and I was looking through the stuff that was being on the shelves. I was looking at the workout clothes, and I happened to see that the weights were out and the organization bins, and I started laughing to myself because I thought, "Wow, human nature is so funny that when the calendar changes, we go, 'New year, new me.' We just want a completely fresh start. We wanna change everything. We have these big goals, these big aspirations. We get all of the planners, we get all of the workout clothes, we download all of the apps to help us create a brand new persona. But what happens if the new year isn't how you thought it would be? Most people lose or don't complete their New Year's resolutions, don't complete their New Year's goals. In fact, most people by the second week of February, second or third week of February, actually quit. They're like, I'm good. Doesn't matter anymore. And while we have intentions and goals to be able to grow ourselves, in that, what happens when life circumstances they come out of nowhere and we enter into a new year absolutely flipped on our head, absolutely just crushed and devastated because the hopes and the plans that we had going into the new year are nothing at all the way that we thought it would be. That's something that I'm not a stranger to. If you're unfamiliar with my story, my family and I are actually entering into our second year of my dad and brother's death anniversary. 2 years ago, 2 days after Christmas, we lost our dad unexpectedly. And then following days later on New Year's Eve, my brother took his life. And those were some really hard experiences that we went into the new year absolutely dashed and crushed, wondering, is God still good? Is this still like, where is God in this? Those are the questions that we ask ourselves when tragedy strikes, when we're hoping for something brand new and it's absolutely not at all the way that we thought it would be. And I know that some of you might actually be experiencing something similar. I know there are those of you that were planning on getting married and you're not going to get married. That relationship is crushed. There's some of you that have been praying for a child and it's another year and there's no child. You've been praying for a new job and you just got let go of the one that you're at. What do you do when life circumstances just absolutely dash you and they crush you? And where is God in that? And that's the question that I want us to wrestle with, that I want us to wrestle with. Is God good? Is he here? Does he still hear me? Because when we're struggling with tragedy, when we're struggling with heartache, when we're struggling with these unexpected circumstances that we had hope in, we say, "Oh, I really wanted this. These were good things. These were good experiences, and now I'm not even having that." Is God still good now that they're no longer here? And I encourage you and I challenge you, if you go back and see my social media page, I've been very honest with the journey that God has brought me on, questioning, is God still good in the midst of tragedy? Is he good in the midst of grief? Is God good? That's the question that's been the age-old question since the beginning of time, since the beginning in the garden with Adam and Eve, when Eve was tempted to not trust that God's word is who God is. That is God really good? Did God really say? Did God truly promise? Where is God when the promises that we have been clinging to and hoping for suddenly seem quiet and empty? If you're going into a new year praying and wondering, you're not alone. It's not an uncommon experience, especially because we live in a fallen world, that we look around and we're like, where is God? And is he still good? And is he still working? But I encourage you to wrestle with that and to hang on, to not lose heart. There's some of you that are wrestling with the divorce of your parents that you maybe you saw coming, but you're like, it still sucks. And struggling with unexpected surgeries, and you're like, but God, like I've been putting my faith in you, and this is the reward that I get. Those are some of the things that we struggle with that God is not ignoring, nor has he caused. I know that when we're wrestling and struggling with suffering, we think that God has caused these things, and he hasn't. Unfortunately, it's a consequence of sin. It's a consequence of living in a fallen and sinful world. And you might be tempted to give up and to despair, or you might be tempted to rush the process. Because as much as in human nature we want to tie things up in a neat little bow, I think it's especially a temptation for Christians because we do have hope. And we do serve a God who creates beauty from ashes. We do serve a God who redeems. We do serve a God who um, is going to make all things right one day. And so I think the other temptation when we're dealing with tragedy and sorrow is that we actually want to rush through that process, and we want to rush through the painful suffering that we're experiencing because you're like, well, God, no, this is supposed to be good. It's going to be good. It's got to be good regardless. And we can actually ignore the circumstance that we're experiencing. And by doing so, we limit the power of who God is because we're trying to just like make it comfortable, but we don't serve a God who makes things comfortable. We serve a God who's powerful, and powerful things are uncomfortable. I've been reading the Chronicles of Narnia lately, and I'm always reminded when I read it the question of Aslan, who, as C.S. Lewis wrote, is basically a depiction of Jesus. And he says in the book, there's the question: is Aslan a tame lion? Is he a safe lion? And the response is, of course he's not tame. He's a lion, but he's good. And I think that's the question that we have to wrestle with when we're experiencing the tragedy. Is God tame? No, of course he's not tame, but he's good. And I promise you that he's good. And so if you're going into a new year and you're wondering, is God good? I promise you that he is. Don't lose heart. Keep wrestling with that question. You'll come through the other end. I promise you. And that brings me into the current reality of today. And this past New Year's Eve, 2023, and I want to share a story with you. So, for my church, I've been doing church announcements, and I love doing it. If you can't tell, I love being able to talk to an audience. I love connecting with people, and it's a really good experience for me. But I was asked to be able to do the New Year's Eve service that was also going to be having baptisms. And I just blanked. Give me a second. Sorry. There we go. I just realized my light wasn't on. Can I try that again? Thank you so much. So I was asked to do a New Year's Eve service, and the New Year's Eve is the anniversary that my brother's death fell on. So I texted the person who was in charge and I said, "Hey, I really, really want to do this. And there's a reason I'll explain in a minute. I really want to do the New Year's Eve service, but it's also the anniversary of my brother's death. And I have no idea how I'm going to be because the thing is, um, unfortunately, because of my involvement leading up to my brother's death, I actually have trauma and PTSD, and I don't say that lightly. I say that as honestly as possible. And so when I was going to text her and letting her know, like, I really want to do this, but I just don't know how I'm going to be. And the reason why I wanted to do it is because I have a friend who I've been getting to know a lot this past year, and it's been a really great experience. And I've been seeing how God has been using um, her life and changing it in a way that has just been so beautiful to witness. And I really wanted to be a part of that. I really wanted to play a role to be involved in what God was doing. And so that was why I wanted to be up there and I wanted to be a part of her being able to get baptized because I've been able to be a part of her walk with God this year and I wanted to see it through. And when we're going through tragedy, when we're going through suffering, the challenge is that we want to check out and we don't actually want to continue to participate in what God is doing. But when we do that, we lose out on the blessing and the opportunity that God has for us. And so that Sunday, I didn't know how I was going to be. I didn't know how things were going to be for me emotionally. And I tell you, I was full of a lot of emotion. But by God's grace and by God's power, I was able to go up there. I was able to do the announcements and read the testimony. And I was just filled with emotion thinking about even if my life isn't exactly how I thought it was going to be, being able to celebrate what God is doing in someone else's life gives me purpose, gives me life, gives me joy because I'm able to play a role in what God is doing. And it is so fulfilling. And it's a temptation to check out and to not participate with what other people are doing. And so I encourage you that God has room for both. He has room for both the tragedy and he has room for both the triumph. He has room for the highs and the lows, the valleys and the hills. And regardless of where you are at right now, God has room for both and God sees what you're going through. He's not going to rush you through the process. And the part for me, and maybe for you too, as you're going into a new year, that past week was really me fighting to live and fighting to shake off the shadows of death that were seeking to suffocate me. And Psalm 23 was really powerful. You read it at like funerals or you read it as something that yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death. But the truth is, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death and feeling the shadows trying to grip and feeling them trying to pull me in and feeling them trying to suffocate and bring me down, even though walking through that, I will not be afraid and you will not be afraid. Because even if you're wondering if God is good, I promise you that He is there, that He's walking with you. That's what makes Him good, is that God is walking with you. He is beside you. He has not abandoned you. He has not forgotten you. I know that when you're going through suffering and through tragedy, it feels like God has forgotten you. And it feels like, what's the point and what's the purpose? And I'm not asking you to search for that. I'm not asking you to search for the purpose. I'm not asking you to search for the point. I'm asking you to trust that God is with you in the middle of the sorrow and in the middle of the suffering, that we serve a God that's not far away, but right near. And sometimes suffering has this way of blinding us to the fact that God is near. And if you're going into the new year filled with suffering, God is here. God is near. He is right beside you. And so I encourage you that whatever it is that you might be experiencing, whatever hope it is that you had that's no longer there, that you would trust that God is with you and that He is indeed very good. And that's what I leave you with. In the midst of everything, you get the choice to decide about how you're going to respond to the circumstances that you're around. You get the choice to decide about whether or not you're going to believe that God is good, even if right now it doesn't seem like it. You get to decide. And I promise you, and as I'm almost done, I'm going to leave you with this. God truly does have an abundant life for you through Jesus. I know it might be hard to believe, it might be hard to recognize, but He has an abundant life waiting for you. And He will walk through every hill and every valley, every high and every low. And so the verse that we're going to be leaving you with today, let me get to the right place here. The verse that we're going to be leaving with, bear with me one moment. Oh, I don't know how to use this. Okay. John 16:33. I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials, but take heart, because I've overcome the world. With or without Jesus, you're going to have suffering. But with Jesus, you will not be alone. Let me know what you guys think. Please be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and put a notification bell so that way you don't miss out on anything that I'll be sharing with you. I'm hoping to have more videos in the coming future. And when you do leave a comment, we're not going to agree on everything, and that's okay. Just please be sure to be respectful because I want to have good conversations. Sometimes we're going through things that just make no sense, and they require compassionate response. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you next Friday. Have a good weekend.